On this week's episode, we have Rabbi Chaim Zvi Senter, the Rosh Hayeshiva of Aderes Hatorah in Yerushalayim. With hundreds of bachrim and thousands of alumni, this person definitely has a massive effect on so many people in Klal Yisrael.
Rabbi Senter grew up in Englewood, New Jersey. His father was the founder of the famous Hechsher, the Chaf K, which growing up in that environment, a lot of free food, a lot of good testing of different types of food. He actually even told us the secret ingredient to Pepsi on this podcast.
Yes. So we know there's a demographic out there of people searching for the Pepsi ingredient, and this is definitely the episode for you. But more than that, we spoke to Rabbi Senter about a lot of his successes as well as a lot of his failures.
Right. You know, you look at somebody like Rabbi Senter who has a successful yeshiva, thousands of alumni, but we spoke a lot about the failures he had and how that, you know, set him up to be so successful in what he does.
If there's an episode for someone who's looking for the underdog story, this episode is definitely for you, and enjoy. Welcome to the Meaningful People Podcast, the podcast where we talk to people who are
meaningful.
Yeah, that sounds good. Here we are with Rabbi Chaim Zvi Senter.
Right.
Wow.
You got the whole name.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Rabbi just came from a wedding, actually, that he was in Masada Kedushin.
I was a backyard wedding.
Okay. Backyard wedding.
Beautiful. I had a driver who was taking me, and he told me that these weddings are really beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, he said he thinks it's much nicer. All chuppahs should be in backyards, and then afterwards they could have like a nice, you know, simchas chasam v'kala or something like that. But it made it much more personable. You know, like it's more personal and real, and there was a lot of simcha there. So it was Baruch Hashem. We should have.
I know we want to talk about Rebbe's life, but once we're on the topic, do you think that these backyard weddings are going to be sticking around more? Do you think it should be sticking around more?
I definitely think it should. I think that it's really beautiful the way it is. And I've been to a few. I've been in Eretz Yisrael also at a bunch of them, and everyone says that they just feel like it's electric because everyone is there. It's much more personal, and I think that it also, you know, it takes away a lot of the unnecessary lavish nature of the weddings that people are talking about. And I would think that it would be nice if it would stick around. I hope it does, or something similar. It doesn't have to be exactly in the backyards, but I think that there's something to be gained. Like every situation we're in, we could gain something from it.
Right, like we could drop the masks and when the time comes. And,
yeah. Exactly.
So Rebbe's originally from Teaneck or Englewood, somewhere in New Jersey.
I grew up in Teaneck, New Jersey.
Teaneck, okay.
Yeah. My parents lived in North Bergen, which is an area of New Jersey you won't hear much about anymore. That's where my family grew up. I'm the youngest, and right after I was born, they moved to Teaneck, New Jersey. Teaneck was also a small community then. You know, New Jersey had all these little teeny communities because everyone's coming over from Ellis Island, and they just like plop themselves wherever they could find in New Jersey. So they had all these little stiebels and things, and that was disappearing. So my parents moved to Teaneck, and Teaneck was growing at the time. There wasn't even a minyan during the week in Teaneck.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's how small. Now there's like a trillion minyan.
They have really good restaurants there also.
Yeah, there's more restaurants than people in Teaneck. Yeah. Anyway, so we moved to Teaneck, and I grew up in Teaneck. I'm a product of Teaneck, New Jersey. I'm very proud of it.
Well, I would imagine, I don't know what Teaneck was back then, but compared to your Rosh Hayeshiva now, and did you live that lifestyle when you were younger? Like imagining, I'll be a Rosh Hayeshiva one day. Was that the vibe?
That wasn't my dream, no.
That wasn't your dream?
No.
What was the dream?
First it was to be a fireman, but that's when I was around 4.
Okay.
And then it was to be a baseball player for quite a while, actually. I loved baseball.
So you could play?
Back in the day, I blew my arm out though many times.
And that's why you didn't make the big leagues.
Yeah.
I imagine a world where Rebbe's like playing baseball, Rabbi Feiner's playing football.
There you go.
Yeah,
he was
Dallas
good at basketball
Cowboys.
also. He was very good at basketball.
Oh,
too,
really?
But yeah.
So you wanted to,
I had a dream to be a baseball player when I was a kid, when I was little. I loved baseball. I used to play, we used to play competitively as kids. There was one of the boys that played with me who was an all-star in the major leagues eventually.
Really?
Yeah. Doug Glanville, his name is. He played for the Chicago Cubs, if I'm not mistaken, and maybe the Reds. He was a first-round draft pick.
Mets or Yankees?
For you. I like?
Neither?
You see, my dad
Teaneck Titans?
Brooklyn. So we like the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Okay,
so
we're going back.
And you stuck with Dodgers.
Yeah, but, you know, my following sports was not something that I like. I regret. I don't regret playing sports, but I've had public discussions with different great rabbis about the fact that I think the following sports for me was a colossal waste of time, and I feel like I lost out on real experiences. I love playing ball. I love being on the field. I love being active, and I think that it's great for a kid to do that. So baseball was like a big passion of mine when I was a kid, and then it was to be a lawyer.
So at what age did you realize you're not going to make the big leagues, and then you went on to law?
So, of course I like to talk about it when I was a kid as if like I'm going to make the big leagues,
right.
One day. And my coach was encouraging me. And my coach was actually named Terry Aronoff. And the other coach there's a coach named Mr. Malcolm who really was like telling me I should like go for it. But it wasn't realistic. I don't have the build for it.
Right.
And one time I met someone in the minor leagues who says, you're crazy. I blew my knees out. I destroyed my body and I didn't make it. And it's just not worth it. And then I said, I'm not even going to talk about it anymore.
The travel is too much. A lot of people, they say like, I was going to make the big leagues, but the travel is just crazy.
Exactly.
It's the wear and tear on the family.
See, I wanted to be a pitcher because there was on the Texas Rangers a Seventh-day Adventist pitcher, so he just put him in the rotation.
Oh wow!
So you had this all planned
I had it
out.
worked out. I had it all worked out, but it wasn't so realistic.
And then you mentioned what you want to be a psychologist or a lawyer.
Yeah. I do appreciate understanding people and the thought process. And as a young boy, that was something that definitely I gravitated to. And I actually wanted to be a pulpit rabbi. That was, when I started thinking about more, being, I was getting older and like something more substantial. For quite a while, I thought I was going to be a pulpit rabbi. I like to speak.
I always think of orange juice when someone says pulpit, though. I can't.
I
think of orange juice.
Sorry.
I don't want pulpit in it.
Okay, whatever. Listen, I'm from Teaneck. That's what we call it. Anyway,
Pulpit
so
rabbi.
what I meant is I wanted to be the rabbi of a shul.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because in my family, I have an older brother that's directly above me, or whatever. The brother above me, I have a sister in between, and he was always the one that was going to be the Rosh Hayeshiva or the Maggid Shiur, and that was always like in the family. It was known that that's what was going to happen, that wasn't really what I was cut out to be, and that's not what people envisioned me. That's not what I envisioned myself or anyone else. And rabbi could be, I'm a ham. I like to talk, and I like people a lot. I'm very social. My brother is so brilliant, and he loves to learn. And ironically, he's Baruch Hashem a very successful Rav. In Muncie, right? And I'm a Rosh Hayeshiva. So, somehow, what I think it happens to be, because I think that today a lot of the youth need personality. They need someone that's, it's not about just, the shiur that you're giving, and Balabata needs something with more content. So, kind of like where each one has found his place,
right,
in an interesting way.
Interesting. Okay, so you're currently, you live in Eretz Yisrael and Arzei with your family,
yep,
and run the yeshiva there. At what point did you realize that that's where your life is gonna be in Israel?
Well, honestly, a lot of my life was just taking it one step at a time. And with everything, like you asked, when did I decide I wanted to stay in learning, or to be a rebbe, or to be a Rosh Hayeshiva, or any of these things? I'm not the type of person that had made these big decisions. And even when I moved to Eretz Yisrael with my wife, one of the best pieces of advice I got from one of my rebbeim, Rabbi Halberstadt, he said to me, just take it one zman at a time, 1 year at a time, whatever it is. And that's the way we did. And we were enjoying it, and we were living what we felt was the dream. And it was hard. Don't get me wrong. We were basically alone in Eretz Yisrael. I have a cousin that lives there. My wife's brother moved there eventually, and he lives in Har Nov. But it's still very hard being away from your entire family. But we took it, one step at a time, and it just became so natural for us. And I identify a lot with what it means to be someone that lives in Eretz Yisrael. I almost consider myself Israeli, kind of Israeli Haredi. Even though I grew up in Teaneck, but if someone would ask me where's my identity, I gained tremendously from all my experiences, whether it's in Teaneck or where I went to yeshiva and Shari Torah and Muncie, and all of this really lends to who I am. But I see myself right now as an Israeli Haredi.
Mm.
Those decisions, like you mentioned, you take it one step at a time.
Yeah.
Is there ever that aha moment that you have to sit down and make that tough decision, or you just roll with it and it just, what you have just became slowly but surely?
It can definitely happen that you have these moments where you have to make a decision. if there's an option that comes up in the States, which has happened at different times, where things, that an opportunity arises and you got to make a decision because, there's a door that might close on you, and are you ready to do that, or do you feel like you need to stay here? So I remember we were in Eretz Yisrael for around 5 years, and we were discussing, going back and forth, and
right after you got married.
5 years. I came to Eretz Yisrael after I got married,
Okay.
and I was there for 5 years in Kollel. And that was kind of like when we made a decision that we're gonna go for it. And that's when we started keeping one day of Yom Tif, which usually is when
That's
you're in.
official.
You're in.
Either that or you're out because you get so stressed out.
I feel like it'd be the first thing I would do.
Yeah. We actually went to Rabbi Leibstein, and I went myself to speak to him about the thought of coming back. I have an amazing family business and an amazing family that I love very, very dearly.
Which we'll get into that.
Great. And there was an opportunity for you to come back. So that was something we struggled with. But I spoke to Rabbi Leib about it. And basically, what came out of it is that we're going to stay in Eretz Yisrael.
So just to let people who don't know is your family runs and owns the Chaf K.
That's correct.
And Nachman and I were just talking about before.
He
was just saying it's like so huge. Like, how does someone even start like a hechsher?
Does somebody wake up and be like, I want to start a hechsher?
But that's a different conversation. But we're just curious. Like, what was that like for you? I mean, imagine at a certain point in your life, you imagine, okay, I'll go back, do the Chaf K, and
right.
It's changing the world in their own way.
For sure.
What was that like for you? Just to
First of all, it's an amazing organization. And it would be a great place to work. You're working in kashrus. You're learning while you're working. It's like it's your dream come true to have that type of opportunity.
It's almost like being a Rosh Hayeshiva.
It's great.
Yeah,
it's great. You talk. My brothers, the whole day they're busy with kashrus, with all different types of shilas that can come up. There's a bezdin over there. It's amazing. I grew up in a home where my father was building this organization. He built it from the ground up. He's the person that started it and stood at its helm.
What was it? Was it assumed that your father, like if you looked at him when he was younger, that he was going to start the Chaf K? Was that like in his DNA?
When he was a kid?
Yeah. Like, did it look like that?
No, not at all. No. My father is actually a mathematician. He was a math professor for many years in Fairleigh Dickinson University in New Jersey and in Yeshiva University in YU. And again, we lived in this little stiebel like over there in North Bergen, and my father would rotate with my uncle giving divrei Torah. My father is a phenomenal speaker, phenomenal. And that's part of why I had this passion to become a Rav, because my father gave these amazing speeches. And so he was there and kind of like functioning as the rabbi of the shul, and the local bakery wanted a hechsher, and that's where it started from. It all started from a doormat. So it all started from just a local bakery, and then a local donut place, and then Howard Johnson's ice creams, and then and now it's Pepsi and
Do you
Ben
realize
Jerry's.
at the moment how big that is, or when you got older, you're able to look back and be like, that's huge. Like in the moment when you were growing up and that hechsher was started, did you realize how cool it was that what your father was doing?
It was a lot of fun, that's for sure. We had a lot of fun.
A lot of free food, or
there was a decent amount of free food, interesting food also. You see, Tofuti was one of my father's big accounts, and we used to like have these all experimental flavors. So we would get them. We would like eat these like weird flavors. We would get that all these different things, and also when there were any type of like national brands that wanted to think about going kosher, so they'd run a kosher run. They wouldn't advertise that they're kosher. They'd run a kosher run, and then they would see if the flavor is good enough, because they're substituting different flavors. So we would get all that because they're not going to put it on the shelf. Right. And they're just going to give it away. So we got a lot. But it came at a price because we had to stamp. This was before we physically stamped every label. When my father got a hechsher, we sat there for hours on our dining room table just stamping and stamping.
But you had the best snack in school. Like, by far. Like, kids wanted to trade with you.
100%. I don't know if you remember these things. There was something called Chipwich. Chipwich was a very hot item. It was cookies with like ice cream and a little like chips around the side.
Okay.
And kids loved coming to our house because we had an endless supply of Chipwich.
So for my next question, what is the secret ingredient for Pepsi? Could you tell? It's just me and Nachi over here. Don't worry.
Well, do you know that there is secrets in Pepsi? I don't know if you know that. No,
I knew there were secrets in Coke.
Everyone knows about Coke.
That makes sense. That Pepsi
so
also.
Pepsi also has. It's just they just run it a little differently, and they don't hype it the way Coke does. But there is secrets in Pepsi, the way they do it differently than Coca-Cola, is they bring lots of ingredients into the factory.
Is this the secret you're telling us?
I'm telling you part of the
All
secret.
right, guys.
Okay, here goes.
This is juicy.
They bring lots of ingredients into the factory, and they close the factory. The mashgiach goes outside, and then they do whatever they do. In other words, they spill stuff out. They don't tell you how much they're using. So the mashgiach knows everything that's going into the factory, but he doesn't know exactly.
He's not allowed to see.
He's not allowed to see.
But he knows. Okay, it's one of
kosher.
these
Right,
these
all right.
items. I
That's
guess
not a
pork's
problem.
not in that mix.
Guess not.
So before we were talking, and I was discussing with Nachi that Rebbe used to be a Rebbe in the mirror,
Correct.
and I'll let Nachi ask his question.
Yeah. What I was discussing with Yaakov before is Yaakov told me from our Intel guy, we have good Intel people that feed us Intel. Yeah, we're on. You were a very popular Rebbe in the mirror. You had a nice following, and the moment to just, I guess, walk away from that, which is probably very comfortable having that. You're in the biggest yeshiva in the world. You have a nice following, very popular, but to walk away and start your own yeshiva, what goes into that? You know?
First thing is you have to be a little crazy.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I didn't want to be the one to say that. I was gonna ask, like, are you crazy? But
it's
I'm glad you said it.
It's definitely crazy. And Baruch Hashem, my wife is extremely supportive of me, which is super important because it was very, very hard. You're letting go of what I thought of as probably the most prominent thing for me. This was a dream come true, to be a Rebbe in the Mir Yeshiva. It's like, that's made it. That's as made it as I ever could have imagined ever making it.
I'm sure there's a ton of menuchas nefesh also.
Yeah. It's easy. You just, everything's being taken care of for you.
Right.
You just come in, say the shiur, and you leave. And a lot of people were not, were not so supportive actually when I did it. They was like, you're crazy, and it is a little crazy. And I was thinking about it, and I think that there was a moment that was for me something defining. When I was doing, I was going through a really rough taisvus. Yeah. Now this taisvus was so rough, my chavrusa lost it. He started screaming. It was like really rough.
He snapped.
Yeah, almost. He was like just so aggravated, so frustrated because Tosfos just was so many different steps and it was so complicated. So he just out of frustration screamed. So I decided I'm going to like map out the Tosfos. I'm going to write down all the steps of the Tosfos. And there was a Rav who was there, who was sitting next to me, and he's like, this doesn't belong in the Mir Yeshiva. The Mir Yeshiva is the Oxford of yeshivas. And this is not appropriate. And I thought about that. And I said, this is not my calling. This is not where I belong. Not that. Now, I love the Mir Yeshiva with all my heart and soul. And my son, who was learning by Rabbi Bender called me and said, your son can go to any yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael. I said, I want him going to the Mir Yeshiva. I love the Mir Yeshiva. Mm-hmm. It's just not my calling. My calling is I want to make the Torah accessible to the masses. I don't want to be Oxford.
Right.
I don't want to be that. That's not my passion. I think it's an amazing thing. And we need to have an Oxford. But I just felt like if I want to be true to myself, so then I'm going to do something else. And I spoke with my Rebbe, and he told me that he wants me to do it. And I told him,
who was your Rebbe at that time?
My Rebbe is Reb David Kain.
Oh,
that is itself like a pretty crazy story, because I was like an American boy, and he's totally Israeli.
From Hebron?
From Hebron, yeah, the Yeshiva of Hebron, and he's becoming more well known now. But when he became my Rebbe, you're talking about 30 years ago, around 30 years ago. Yeah, so most people never heard of him, and I couldn't even speak to him. I used to speak to his wife; she's American,
wow.
Yeah, she used to talk between the two. I would like break my teeth to try to get a thought across.
Ken betach ani yodei
Right,
ma
stuff like that.
Yeah,
Right.
maybe he's not even sure what you asked him. Like maybe he said, "Stay in the mirror."
Sometimes he wasn't. By the time that's already much later in my life, we already had Baruch Hashem, a great rapport, and he's the kind of like the nasi of our yeshiva. And when he suggested to me to open, I was just talking to him about how I didn't feel like this was being true to myself. He said, I think you should open.
Which is great to have that leadership and that push.
Yeah, it's such a blessing. Such a blessing.
Something I think, I don't know if a lot of people realize that everyone has their a Rebbe, even if someone's a Rosh Hayeshiva, have a very big yeshiva, they still have someone that they don't always know the answer to, and they go to their Das Torah and figuring out.
Well, my Rebbe used to go to Rabbi Leib. He sent me to Rabbi. He used to go to Rabbi Leib every week, once a week. And he was Rosh Hayeshiva of Hebron. So you're talking about like on Motzes Gedolei HaTorah, and he was still going to his Rebbe. So I'm very comfortable, not knowing answers to questions. I don't have to have all the answers, and and sometimes I need guidance, and I still speak to him on a regular basis. Like when I decided that I wanted to come here now, I'm here for a little bit, so I spoke to him about it obviously before I made that decision.
Right. So you leave the mayor, and like you said, you wanted to start something. You felt like you had a calling. Now, what was that? How did you create the issue that you created? What went into that? Instilling a certain, mahalach.
So, what is probably my passion is getting people to appreciate themselves. And I think a lot of people have a lot of talents that they're not aware of. I don't consider myself personally exceptional at anything. I mean, from all the people that you've interviewed, there are people that are exceptional at a lot of things. I don't really consider myself particularly exceptional. I'm not particularly intelligent. I'm not particularly funny.
We beg to differ, but yeah, you can keep going.
I just think what I do is I work very hard, because one of the things that I got, and particularly from my mother, one time I met Rabbi Bender and he asked me, like, who's your hero? It was such an interesting question, just like that.
Just
that's
an interesting question. But
cross that off the list, Yaakov.
Yeah. I know, we're going to ask that. Rabbi Bender, he asks questions for
He's
us,
part of the intel team. Who's your hero, by the way?
So, I was caught off guard then, but my mother is my hero. And my mother gave me a tremendous amount of confidence to just do what you want to do and just believe in yourself and don't be afraid to fail, which is really, I think, the most important thing. I'm not afraid to fail. I failed a lot. But I want to teach people to be comfortable with themselves and believe in themselves and bring out all their talents. That's why the yeshiva is a byline, which means that this is what we like. This is what we profess, is unlocking greatness. And I think that a lot of people.
And you've said it before. It was Charlie Harari's book, because he has a book called.
That's right. That's right.
When the book came out, I'm like, wait a second, that's a slogan, but it's a great slogan, I guess.
Yeah. I don't hold it against him.
Right.
He's like, I want you to come to my show, and we have an Unlocking Greatness show. I'm like, wait a second, that's my show. It just didn't happen yet. But yeah, so that's what we do. We also have the same idea, and that's my passion. And I've been working on that and trying to find people that I feel that understand the yeshiva's mission, and our staff is like, it's very cohesive, and to try to bring out the best in your talmidim and to really have a passion to see your talmidim become better, not just be someone that an opportunity for you to say a shiur or for you to be able to give over a shtickle Torah. It's bring out your talmidim and make them great. That's what I love to do.
What's the secret? What's the secret ingredients? Like, how do you do that?
Well,
it's a loaded question. I mean, I'm assuming it's different for each kid.
Oh, it's totally different.
Yeah.
I one time spoke. I'm not one of these big chinuch gurus. One time I spoke about the rules. I gave the golden rule of chinuch. What I think the golden rule of chinuch is that there's no rules. Because I don't think rules are good. Because people ask me, like, what's your approach to chinuch, and how do you do things? I'm like, I just get in the room. I
with
feel
all the ingredients, you lock the mashkiach out, and you just start pouring.
Yeah,
right?
I just feel it. It's different boys need different things, and you have to connect with your talmidim. You have to love your talmidim. Some people love what they learn. Some people love to teach, and some people just love their students. I love my talmidim, and that's what it's about. And I'll tell you a great story. And I started teaching in the yeshiva. So my Rebbe from America is Rabbi Stern.
From
Passaic, yeah. Rabbi Stern is extremely hard to get a hold of, super hard. And you could call, and you have this small window, and lots and lots of people are trying to get to the same window. And I had called him about a particular shalos early on. I had just started teaching. And I asked him the question, he gave me an answer, and I said to him, I can't do this every single time I have a shayla. Call you, it takes me days to get a hold of you. What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to deal with the situation? And this was his advice to me. He said, listen, when parents love their children, they don't really need to have parenting classes. because they instinctively know what to do because they care. Just care about your talmidim, and Hashem will give you the right eitzah. So just love them. So that's what I try to do, and it's very often just comes out differently when a boy walks in the room, and it ends up in a different place. But that's what we're trying to do. Now, I tell you something. Which one time I was sitting in my office, I was eating dinner, and the bacher walks in the office, and he learns in yeshiva, and he says to me, "I figured it out." Now, by the way, the name of our yeshiva is Aderes Hatorah. I don't know if you even know. That's what the yeshiva called. But a lot of people call it centers, and there's something called a center's boy. That's what they kind of like put us into a certain mold. But
I told Nachem, like, just don't mention the word centers. Just try to say Aderes Hatorah as much as you can.
It's okay.
I'm glad I could stop thinking about not saying it now.
He comes into my office. He goes, "I figured it out. You're just a center's boy. You just like grew up a little bit." And he wasn't saying that in any type of critical way. What he meant to say was, I get these guys. I get them. So I understand what they're going through. I told you, I really don't think that I'm particularly talented. And I just try to work hard. So if I feel that way, so I'm like, you and me, we're the same. So I'm going to roll up my sleeves. You roll up your sleeves, and let's just get going. So that's kind of the way I feel, the way we work is I'm trying to identify with my talmidim.
So I know, obviously, a big passion of Rebbe is learning Torah. Has that always been a passion of Rebbe's?
Well, I wasn't always good at it.
What do you mean by that?
When I was younger, I used to struggle with reading and writing, both of them. I actually remember, I have a very vivid memory. I might have made it up, but that's my memory of not being able to write my name. When
Really?
the teacher was teaching you how to write the name, everyone knew how to write their name, and I just couldn't do it.
Well,
And my teacher, who was actually related to me, she wrote my name and put it under the paper and said, just trace it and don't worry. Right. And I remember feeling really silly. And I remember like putting my book on my head because I just didn't know what to do with myself. And I just felt really silly because like everyone else can write and I just couldn't write. And I always struggled with reading. Reading was always hard for me. I used to have a reading tutor when I was younger and I just didn't like it. So that's why I played ball a lot because it's much more fun than reading. And I never thought that I was going to spend my life reading things. And
then one day.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what happened. I was petrified of reading in public. I butchered my bar mitzvah parsha like nobody's business. And I couldn't read. I couldn't daven in public. I couldn't do anything. I used to freeze up. I could speak because I didn't have to read. But any reading was horrible. And then one Rebbe just decided, that's it. He said, the center's going to read every single Gemara for all of us. And I was like, oh my gosh. And that was it. After a while, how embarrassed can you get? I was so embarrassed. And then it was just, this is just me and I just can't read. And then I started trying to do Shnai Mikra and I was breaking my teeth. And I remember every once in a while, guys would even come over and make jokes about the fact that I was like butchering it. And I made a decision that I don't care how embarrassed I'm going to be. I will never turn down someone that asked me to read in public. Like Haftorahs, even when I was a Rebbe in the Mir Yeshiva, by the way, I remember one time I was in Baltimore, they asked me to read a Haftorah. It was embarrassing. But I'm not going to get anywhere if I just hide. So I just decided one day, that's it. I'm just going to read. And I have a reading disability. I tell people, I have a reading disability. You got a problem with it? That's the way Hashem made me. And I just had to overcome it. So I just pushed and read and it became more comfortable. I'm definitely not a great reader still. I've read so much that I'm familiar with a lot of the text. And that's when it became something that I felt like I can do. But it definitely was overcoming a lot. And, and I do tell my talmidim sometimes that I had a reading disability. And it doesn't mean that it can stop you. It shouldn't stop you. It doesn't have to stop you.
Something you mentioned before is you've had many failures. Obviously, you had a lot of successes, but something...
You are not one of them, by the way. You're not one of the failures.
Okay,
that's
good.
for sure.
Oh, I thought you meant not one of the successes.
No.
I was like, oh boy, this just got interesting.
I had to qualify that one. No.
Yeah, spoiler alert, I am a talmid of Rabbi Senter. I was in yeshiva for 4 years, and plus in Kolo there.
And a neighbor.
Yes, and I lived in your building when I went back married with my wife. So there's definitely a lot of successes, and we'll talk about that. But the failures... Is there a specific failure that sticks out in your mind that happened and you're like what happened there? Like why what went wrong.
Is there a specific failure that sticks out in your mind, by the way, about that?
That from you?
Yeah.
Oh, that's an interesting question.
Yeah. Because you've been around for a while.
That is true. Let me say my
Are you
point.
gonna say one?
No, my point is though, I've seen Rebbe try to do a lot of things, and the inspiration that I got was I saw a lot of them not work out, but you pivoted. You said, okay, and we'll move on. A lot of times, at least in my life, and I think a lot of people's life, when they fail, it like gets them down and like, okay, now I don't know, I can't do some other initiative. Something specifically, I do recall you trying to create a British. A British Aderes Hatorah. Oh no, that's not.
That was the one I was thinking of, but that's a good one also. That was a fail.
That was a fail.
It was
exciting.
No
like
question.
all the British guys in
it was
yeshiva
actually
super excited.
Epic fail. It was a pretty big fail, that one. We one of the things that I love the yeshiva and it's my passion, but we were looking to expand a little bit, and we thought to have a English division. Mm-hmm. And we had opened it up, and it failed just on numerous fronts. It itself failed, and it was actually made the yeshiva also lose its equilibrium because the English boys kind of like went off on their own. And
both in Eretz Yisrael and English.
Yeah. Within the yeshiva, there was this.
Why separate? They're so different.
They are so different.
Yeah.
Now, what we do now is now we only have a limited amount of English, and they have to integrate. And if you're willing to basically become quote unquote like an American yeshiva bachar, then you're okay. But to have that separate division was a no-go. It did not work at all.
What was the failure you were thinking about?
What was the epic part?
What was that part of that? It just wasn't. It never even got any momentum. It was the boys were not happy. Okay. The English boys, the American boys, the Rebbeim, everything went wrong. And honestly, and what I tell people now also, I don't understand the mentality. And like I have bachrim that are from Mexico, from Antwerp. I know that I am limited to how much I can understand them. It's a different mentality. Right. England's also a different mentality. So Baruch Hashem, we have a lot of talmidim that do great, even though they're from different places. But I don't fool myself, and maybe then I was fooling myself a little, to think like, okay, we could do this with the English. And I remember when we opened, I was in England, someone was like, wow, I can't believe you Americans are worried about your English friends. That's so nice. And I guess he was just kind of like tempering me, like this might not work.
Right.
And it didn't work.
So what was the failure you had in mind?
I had in mind the football league. One of the things that was a passion was to make a football league, which the yeshiva league, they wanted to call it the Mahadran League. We tried to avoid that name. But at the football games, there's all different types of people that came, and the yeshivas were complaining about it. And I do speak to a lot of yeshivas. This wasn't just something coming from me. And I happen to be a person that likes to do things. So when someone says, I really wish this would happen, so I jumped on it, and we did it for a year. And it was a lot of work, and it didn't get enough traction in order for it to do it again. It caused a little bit too much friction between some talmidim and some yeshivas, and we just let it slide. And the league happens to be much better today than it was then, but whatever it is, that didn't make it.
So how do you pivot? From having failures to just like Yaakov mentioned, people will try so many things in their lifetimes, and it could be after they try something that fails, they're just going to say, okay, I'm going to stop trying for a bit and, go easy. But how do you, get back to the drawing board and say, I'm going to try again after a failure?
Well, it's hard for everyone, obviously, including myself. But one of the things I always try to remind myself is that I always think back and say, was it the right decision to try to do this? Did I do anything wrong when I assessed the situation and said this is the right thing to do? And as long as I'm confident with the fact that I was correct in making that attempt, so Hashem decided the world is not ready for it, or it's just not right for the world right now. So it's not on me. I can try as hard as I want if I know that Hashem's the boss. So if He doesn't want it to happen, it's just not going to happen. So I know that this is the right thing. It's just if Hashem decides the world's not ready for it, so then it won't happen.
That's beautiful.
On the other side of this coin, there are many successes that you've done.
Thank you.
I'm
interviewing a failure. That's great.
I'm more excited to talk about that because those programs are very dear to me. So I want to talk about two of them, and you probably imagine what I'm going to talk about. One is the incentive program, which I clearly know about, but I would love for you to, I guess, let our audience and let people listening to hear that idea.
Sure.
Of what.
You want to tell me what the other one is? Because I'm just
curious.
The
other one's...
I even know the other one.
The other one's Super Seder.
Wow.
Super Seder.
Okay,
we won
awesome.
the Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
That was...
And this year was... We
and
had
this year...
in Yehuda, right?
Yeah. That was crazy also, by the way. That was crazy.
The idea of doing it was crazy?
You're doing it that was really crazy.
And you...
Why was it so crazy?
You went all
because
out.
Because a lot of people told me that you're nuts. I mean...
And it was full.
It was full. It was jam-packed.
It was... I didn't have a seat. It was that full. I got there a few
man.
minutes late. It was so full.
A special bracha.
So yeah.
So we'll go to the incentive program first.
Okay, sure.
So I can tell you how it happened with a lot of things in my life. Hashem just like made it happen. I can't really take that much credit for it. I can't take any credit. That's the truth. I can't take any, but I'll just tell you how it happened. It was the first year of yeshiva. Now I really wanted.
What year is this? Sorry, just to give.
14 years ago.
Wow.
First year of yeshiva.
So in 1994, I'm terrible at math. No, I'm kidding. I was making a joke.
Okay.
Well, I was making a joke. He was serious.
Go on.
14 years ago.
Yeah.
It's the first year of yeshiva. And I really wanted to establish a certain level of expectation, And it was important to me that the Zman doesn't end Purim. Purim is not the end of the Zman. You got another 2 weeks to the Zman. And there was a wedding that was happening in New York that I had to go to. It was not negotiable. Now, I'm out. I'm not going to fool myself. And I'm trying to figure it out. It's the first Zman of yeshiva. If I do this, I'm setting a very bad precedent, and then I'm fighting an uphill battle. So I got to figure out what to do. So I came up with this idea. I have a cousin that lives in Moscow, chief rabbi of Moscow, or Pinchas Goldschmidt.
Well, we should have him on the podcast one day.
You should. He's also the head of the Union of European Rabbis.
Oh, wow.
He's big. Pinchas Goldschmidt.
So he's your cousin, okay, in Moscow.
And my idea was, let me end the Zman in Moscow. And I'll just duck out. Like, no one will notice. Everyone's having a great time in Moscow. I was like, where did Rabbi Senter go? I don't know. Who cares? Look at this. That was the plan.
KGB.
That was the plan. I was going to dump them all on Rabbi Goldschmidt and just, you take care of them. And the plan went into action. Now, before we went to Moscow, we found cheap tickets would stop off in Poland. And it coincided with the Yartzeit of Rabbi Melech of Lezhensk. Now, I've never been to Poland. I was not one of those people that believed in going to these places. I believed that you want to go to see, one of these yeshivas, like you want to see the Mir, go to Beis Yisrael. You want to see Ger, go to, what are we going back to Poland for? I did not believe in it. I've never been there. But we had to stop off anyway because it made the tickets cheaper, so we did. And we spent the Shabbos there in Lezhensk, and it was unbelievable. And I saw what a tremendous impression it made on our boys. Everyone, including myself. It was the most amazing Shabbos.
Guess you became a believer then.
I became a believer.
And 14 years ago, I just want to clarify, it wasn't like the in thing to go to these places.
No, it was not.
Now it's like crazy.
No, now it's like a fad. It's cool, but back then, people were like, why are you going to Poland?
Totally.
It's not.
And not only that, we were in Lezhensk. We were the only people that were not Hasidish. And listen, everyone was Hasidish, and there's these American boys. This like, what are you bringing American boys to Lezhensk for? Like what, but they loved it. The Hasidim loved it. Our boys were very spirited. We were singing and dancing, but it was definitely not the thing to do at the time. And I saw what a tremendous impression it made. I said, okay, we got to do this again next year. How are we going to pull this off? So I came up with this idea of having an incentive program. From Hanukkah till Purim, I'm going to put the boys on this regimen kind of, and get them to make extra goals in their learning and their davening and their whole schedule. And I tried to do it in a way that it was attainable for everyone. It could be hard for some people. And it was more about the effort, because that's what I'm all about, than about reaching certain milestones like finishing X amount of blot. It was more about how much time you're putting in and how consistent you are. Anyway, the point is that it pushes people. And I've seen from the beginning how you bring people out of their comfort zone, you show them they could do things that they didn't think they could do, and then you give them the most amazing experience. Like, it's phenomenal, but at the same time, it's so much ruchnius. It's davening, it's going to kivrei tzadikim, it's getting in touch with your history. And it's a trip of a lifetime.
I've been on the trip twice. It's life-changing.
It's very emotional.
Definitely.
It is amazing. And to be with your friends and to earn it. You're not just like, okay, we're going on a trip. You worked for months to be able to get here. And I've seen a tremendous growth that people have gone through because of it. And I'm a believer in incentives in general. I believe that I give myself incentives, to do things, because you have a struggle inside of you. You have your neshama and your guf, and you gotta kind of like get your guf to like play along. So I'm gonna give my guf something so that my neshama gets what it needs to get, and who cares? So if that's the way, that's what
you have like an example of like how you'd incorporate that, an incentive like in someone's life. If let's say someone's listening and say, how do I give myself an incentive to do something? What's an appropriate incentive for me to do?
So that's a great question.
Thank you.
One time I was talking to a boy. I'm like, what do you not have that you would like really like? Because I was trying to give him an incentive. He's like, nothing. I'm like, okay.
That's hard.
That was it. I couldn't incentivize. I couldn't give him anything. He couldn't think of anything. He was like, I can't think of anything that I want. That was sad. But I think basically it boils down to you have to give yourself something that you otherwise wouldn't necessarily forgive yourself. Like if a person is on his own dime, right? Something, and I think it should be something like a watch or a pair of shoes or a trip somewhere or something like that. And if I really want to and I've seen people, like for example, we did a minion challenge for our married people. There are guys still going. Years later.
Well, during Corona, it's probably a little harder.
Right.
A little harder.
You're
but
right. You're right. You should know. It was. You mentioned it.
Sorry, yeah, we said before you don't want to mention Corona, but it had to come up. You said minion challenge. I'm like, oh gosh.
Yeah, it's
There's
really,
not
it was
going
really
to
hard
challenge.
for some of these guys. They haven't missed a minion in 4 years.
Oh my gosh.
Some of them, and it's a big struggle. But my point is that once you get that going, so then it just keeps rolling.
Mm.
So I give myself every once in a while. I don't usually buy myself things, but I like to eat. So I get something like a nice bowl of
foodie.
I'm challenged, man.
I told you not to should have challenge before we did this. So that was one. You know what? Is there a list of places that yeshiva's been to? I know. Okay, Poland and Russia.
So many places.
So it's not the same place every year?
Italy.
No. We've been to
Czech Republic.
Almost everywhere. We haven't been to Switzerland. We've been to Morocco. We've been to Bosnia, Serbia. I think Serbia. If that's not a dangerous place, we've been there.
I remember. I don't remember. It was after I was in yeshiva.
Croatia.
There's places that like I'm like, to be honest, I did not know that was a country.
That was probably that trip. We went with Dr. Ari Greenspan to Croatia and to all those places up there
on the map.
Yeah, Sofia is in Sofia.
That's a place?
That's the capital of a country which is escaping me now. Because I'm being
Bulgaria.
But very good.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's right.
And
thank you.
That's the intel.
Right, Bender, if you're listening to this, Nachi paid attention in 5th grade, so very good.
That's where it was, right.
And okay, so getting on to the Super Seder, for those who don't know about that, that's, during the Super Bowl, the whole world is doing something, but there's a Torah.
What's that, Yaakov? What's the whole world doing?
I don't even know because I'm by Super Seder, so I don't really know. No, the whole world is watching the Super Bowl, and I don't have to give the pitch. Could Rebbe explain to people what it is?
Yeah, Super Seder is our answer to the Super Bowl, and I like to tell a story about there was the Schwadron family was walking through the old city, and they saw one of the tzaddikim of the old city. They saw him there, and he was looking at an advertisement for dancing in Yericho, mixed dancing in a movie on Friday night, and he was writing down the times of the event, and they were like, "What are you doing?" And he said, me and my friends, we learn whenever these types of things happen because we need to have a counter force. So we make sure that we have a special Seder whenever they have this type of event. So that's kind of like what we're doing. We're trying to, it hurts me, it pains me. Like I mentioned earlier, if you remember, that following sports is not something it's something I regret and I did when I was younger. I feel it was a tremendous waste of time at best. And it was very distracting for me, and it's not productive. You're just sitting on a couch. And it bothers me that people, there's thousands. I spoke to boys, they told me that like months of their lives have been wasted just sitting there and talking about nothingness. And I want to fill their lives with meaning. And it's amazing. It's magical. Yaakov, I can't explain it. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah,
magical is a very good word. It's exciting. It's pumping. You feel alive.
So what happens during
Super Bowl? So we're learning. This is what I'm telling you. I can't explain it to you. Boys that never missed a Super Bowl in their life.
Yeah.
and they walk out feeling like $1 million.
How do you get them to be in?
And keep in mind, in Israel, by the way,
Yeah.
it's the whole time difference is we start learning
at 12
at
o'clock
12 and you go through the morning and
we daven at Nate's at the Kaisel, and then we dance and they understand this has already become one of the signatures of yeshiva, like Yaakov was mentioning. It was one of the things that was like obvious. So boys know already when they're coming in that this is what we do. But we hype it and we get into it. And this year we give out Super Seder caps. That's for the guys. We give out, what do they call it? Merch? Is that what it's called?
Merch.
Swag.
Swag, exactly. Stuff like that. Whether it's mugs. Last year was mugs. And
that's a big step. Mugs to caps. Caps are awesome.
Yeah.
So
last year you did it in Brooklyn.
This past year we did it in Brooklyn also. Right.
This past year. Honestly, we lost track of months.
Yeah.
I feel like we lost half a year.
Like 8 years, yeah.
This February,
I was in Brooklyn, and the yeshiva was obviously in Eretz Yisrael.
Right.
We were in both places. It's been something I've been talking about for a while. It's a one-time thing. I did it. I'm not coming back.
What? Who's going to do Super Seder here then?
Yaakov is
okay.
I spoke to Rabbi Feiner about it. I spoke to a lot of rabbis because it was super successful.
Right.
How many people were there?
How many people were there? Well, the big number is over 1,000.
Yeah, wow.
And why I say the big numbers because there was a lot of kids there also.
Right.
There was Elvis Abanim that was there, but we had hundreds. There was hundreds of my talmidim there, Baruch Hashem. Really
awesome.
Amazing.
The moment that I realized that how big Super Seder was when it was Shavuos, and I'm like, I was trying to like get that Super Seder feeling for Shavuos night. It's very similar, learning the whole night, that concept. And there was a certain like force that I felt, excitement by Super Seder. I'm like, I want that by Shavuos. And that's what I've been trying to do every Shavuos since. So yeah, that was very...
I'm sure it's pretty cool to be part of something like that. When everyone else is doing one thing and it's not like you're doing just something else, you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, it's awesome. And it is magical, like I said. But I want to tell you, I didn't know... I set myself up for a serious fail because I didn't know the guys were going to buy in when we started. It wasn't like
do you ever get any? Well, you did mention that if you're coming to the yeshiva, it's done. But is there ever anybody that said?
But it wasn't always like that. I tell you that I remember the second year of yeshiva when it was the Giants against the Patriots, and it was a big game, and the guys were like, "There's no way we're going to miss this game. There's no way." And I pulled a fast one on them. I asked Rabbi Feiner to come speak, and they were like, "We can't not come." Rabbi Feiner, when he was living in Eretz Yisrael,
right.
And they came, and everyone was there. And I want to tell you, the biggest football fan is the one that got me to do it here in America. The biggest football fan because he appreciates it.
Is it a secret who he is?
I don't think he'd want me to say his name. I don't think he'd want me to say his name.
Nachi Gordon. No. Okay.
But he flew in from out of town. Let me just say that. He came to Brooklyn from out of town. He took a flight in for one day just to be there by the Super Seder. And it became something that people are looking forward to. And it's amazing how you could just, all you have to do is redirect the energy. And you can, because people are excited. Like, I want to have a good time. Let me have a good time. Not at Super Bowl. I'm like, great, have a good time with us. We'll have a great time.
Right.
We had great food. We had a lot of fun. Yeah. We had, we brought in some dynamic speakers. It was awesome.
Yeah, it is really exciting. This is a question we ask a lot of people, and Nachi doesn't think I should be asking it anymore, but I'll still ask it. Does Rebbe,
case by case,
does Rebbe have a favorite mitzvah?
It's a good question. I like that question.
How do you?
I'll tell you why, Nachi. Because there's a Rambam. The Rambam says that a person gets Olam Haba for doing mitzvahs, but Chaye Olam Haba, you only get if there's one mitzvah that you really connect with in a very, very deep level. So there's something about having your mitzvah. There's like, this is the mitzvah.
So what's your mitzvah?
I'm going to have to say it's...
Besides for Talmud Torah.
That's what he has. But that's
Nachi says it's typically a lot
that's
of
what everyone's going to say. Listen, that's what I do 24/7.
I think we're like 6 for 6, so every single person...
Okay, listen.
So I think I'll go was like pizza or something.
I'll tell you a quick story. We were on a Europe trip. We were actually in Vienna. And you could wear you down. I'm on a bus with these guys all day, all the time. We're coming, we're going. And we got to Vienna. And I was just so exhausted. I'm like, you know what? I told the tour guide, Akiva, do me a favor. Leave me here. I'm just going to stay in the shul. And I had a few hours myself. And I'm sitting there and I'm learning. And I was like, I felt like decompressing. And the tour guide came back and he's like, you got to do more learning. You're like so relaxed now. But that's what it is. It's what it is for me. It just... Torah's my life.
Something that
I feel a part of, and I think a lot of people go to yeshiva. It's one thing in yeshiva. It's very exciting. It's very nice, but it doesn't. That life doesn't really end after yeshiva. Whether they stay in Eretz Yisrael or come back to America and start working or start learning in America. What's your goal for the typical yeshiva guy? What do you think should be the case when they leave Eretz Yisrael? How do they still stay connected to what they were doing, to the growing?
To the growing. You don't mean just...
I threw out a lot of stuff there, and while I'm asking it, I'm like, I did not formulate this question well. You go to Eretz Yisrael, you grow. It's an amazing experience. Then you come back to America. How does one still grow, stay connected to that life?
Well, it's definitely a major struggle. A lot of boys have a major struggle, and it's something that I myself am still trying to figure out. I got to be honest, because the boys come to Eretz Yisrael and we put them in this bubble, and like I said, I consider myself almost Israeli Haredi, and that's the bubble that we're putting them in. That's what they're surrounded by. And they're removed from technology. They're removed from the culture, right? Even someone that's following sports in Eretz Yisrael, but you're not really living it the same way there, and everything. And then you come back, and how do you re-enter into this atmosphere? And it's not an easy thing to do.
It's like, seems like impossible. Just like the idea, it's just hard. It's very difficult.
It's really rough. And what I struggle with is we put so much into our talmidim, and sometimes they unravel a little bit. And on one hand, it's normal, because if you could do the same thing in America as you could do in Eretz Yisrael, so then why do we have Eretz Yisrael? So obviously Eretz Yisrael is supposed to be special. I tell boys, if you come back to America and it's not the same, then you're probably on target. It's not meant to be the same. Still, you want to try to stay true to your core beliefs. Now, one of the things that I'm still thinking about is doing something in America. And it is, definitely, I've spoken to people about it. And because I have this feeling, the hardest part of my job, I've said, the second hardest part of my job is fundraising. I hate doing that. The hardest part of my job is I have my talmidim. I'm so close to them. They're mamish part of my family, and then they go back, and then it's like, imagine having to constantly saying goodbye to your children. It's really hard, and I try to keep in touch, and we all know how hard it is to keep in touch nowadays, and with the time difference, and I've got a lot on my plate in Eretz Yisrael, and even though I come in as often as I can, and we try to get together, I do want to. I would love to try to build something here where people can feel like that there's something natural for them to segue into. I'll give you one more example. I'm sorry I'm talking so long.
No, this is your show.
This is great.
It's my show.
Well, you know what I mean.
Unlocking greatness with Rabbi Senter.
Welcome to my show, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I got two great guests who are here. They're wonderful.
I walked into that one.
So, Yaakov, you went to yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael.
Yes, it was great.
How was your?
What was your biggest failure?
So, I was saying like this. Yeah. In our yeshiva, we're very strict on technology. I'm very strict on it.
Everyone needs technology.
Everyone needs to have the right technology.
No, I'm saying that's what are you strict on?
No, I'm strict on not allowing
so.
viewing devices is what I mean. Now, when I say technology, we actually do have now smartphones in the yeshiva, but they're very, very filtered, and they can't view anything. Mm-hmm. So my issue is viewing devices. We could talk about that if you want to, but my point was like this. One of the boys said to me, I got no problem not having a smartphone when I'm in Israel, because no one's got it here. You walk around the streets and everyone's got their kosher phone.
Right.
It's when I get back to America and everyone's on their smartphone. I can't do it.
It's an uphill battle.
Yeah, it's almost like you said. It's almost impossible. So I can't say that I figured it out 100%. I'm putting all this into these guys. And
you're investing a lot.
I do. I invest. Yeah, I give my heart and soul.
So what's stopping you?
Stop me from doing it in America? I just got to be ready.
Right.
I don't know if I'm ready yet, but I'm kind of jockeying into position right now.
Okay. People who are listening are like, yeah, go for it.
Something that I know, Rebbe barely sleeps. I don't even know if there's an average amount of night. I know if I want to call you at 3:30 your time, I could call you, and it's normal. And then
Right.
if I want to call you at 6:30 a.m. your time, it's also normal. You're up, and you do devote so much of your time to the yeshiva and the bachrim.
Do you not sleep?
He doesn't sleep.
So that's definitely, if there's one thing that I'm good at, it's at not sleeping. That's the one thing. And I do think
Were
it's
you
a
always
gift.
like that, or you acquired that?
No, I was not. When I was younger, I think I used to sleep a lot.
That you slept then, and then you.
Yeah, I think so.
That was it.
What did you
That's
do?
right.
You sit on a switch that said no sleep anymore? Like, how do you do that?
I don't know. It could be.
I'm
that-
really curious. Like, how?
So I have two answers for you. I don't know the answer. I don't know the truth. One
Okay.
is, my father always says that necessity is the mother of invention.
Mm-hmm.
The first night of yeshiva, I didn't know what I was doing,
Right.
and I had to set up the benches. I was setting up the benches until 4:00 in the morning. I'm like, how am I going to get up in time for Shacharis tomorrow? Well, I guess I'm getting up because I don't got a choice.
Right.
And that just kept on going and going and going. And when I can't miss Shacharis, that's not optional. So when I had come home and I got all these messages, all these people I have to speak to, I can end up. I do sleep, but I sleep much less than most people.
Is there like
do.
an average that you know?
There's
That you
really,
sleep?
I'd say.
Well, then back to there was one. That was one reason.
The other reason is it could be I feel like I just have a gift. God gave me a gift. I don't need sleep. I usually don't get snappy. I don't get snappy. I don't get like stressed out. I don't need comfortable sleep. I sleep on the couch most nights. Whatever I do sleep.
Coffee, like big coffee guy?
I don't drink any coffee.
Wow.
No
Rabbi
coffee.
eats apples.
I don't drink any Coke. I'm not a caffeine person. I just go on natural. That's the
awesome.
one thing and it could be, I think it's just, it could be just a gift. God gave it to me, and I'm very thankful because it gives me more hours to work.
Yeah.
So my question is that, like, how do you balance it out with, obviously you said before your rebbitzen, the rebbitzen, your wife is like standing behind and helping you. How are you so busy with everything? Like how, like she's the pillar there and something, I don't know if this is maybe too personal and we could cut it out if it is, but I heard once that you told your wife that if there's ever a time that she feels that the yeshiva is a priority before the family and her, that you're going to stop everything. And is that true?
Yeah.
Where'd you hear that?
Yeah.
I heard it.
Where'd you hear that?
I heard it from someone. I won't say who. And I don't
Your
know.
phone
if
is
maybe that's-
bugged.
Maybe after this interview, you'll tell me who you heard it from.
Yes,
I'll go-
I honestly thought it was very sweet and very beautiful, and it shows Rebbe's commitment, and I wanted to talk about it, and
Right.
clearly I was a little awkward in asking that and talking
No,
about
that's
it.
okay. I'm very comfortable talking about it. I hope.
Yeah,
I hope it's the right
for
thing
sure.
to talk about it. It's true. I did tell my wife that, and I believe that that's the honest truth. And I love my family very much, and I love learning. I love my life, and the yeshiva is something that Hashem has given me to do. If it's not the right thing to do, I just won't do it. So it's not like I'm married to my job. I'm not. I'm married to my wife. My wife is really, if there's anyone here that's like a celebrity, it's my wife. She's unbelievable what she does. And I appreciate her tremendously, and I respect her. And I think that family should come first, and this should be a family adventure. Like, this is a real adventure for us. And if she's not on board, then I'm not on board, and I'm not going to do it. And I've told her that many times. Now, I'm not saying it's always easy and we always juggle it right, because I could be in yeshiva 24 hours a day. I could, because I'm trying to get boys to even do even more, and
Right.
and there's so many bachrim that can use another chavrusa. And it's a tough balance between giving your family enough time and dealing with the demands of the yeshiva. And I can't say we always get it perfect, but the underlying understanding is that this is our principle. Our principle is my family comes before the yeshiva. And if for whatever reason my family needs me, then I'm there for them. And I feel that it's only because of that my wife is able to be so amazingly supportive that, whenever I'm not around, which is way too often. I shouldn't say too often, because this is a decision we made, but it's very often, more often than most people. It's only because she knows that we established that relationship that she can support me to do it.
But what's so amazing is your talmidim feel the same way.
Same way about what?
That you're always available to them, and that they feel like they come first. That's what I've been hearing.
Well, I will tell you straight, my talmidim do not come first. My family comes first. My talmidim,
Myself as a talmid, I definitely feel it though, which is cool. What Nachi's saying, I feel like if I need to reach you, I'll reach you easily.
Right. Well, that's because as a family, we made that decision. My
Right.
whole family, my kids also, they made that decision. They understand the importance of the yeshiva.
Right. No, but it's a
and
cool
we're all there,
balance.
and we'll do everything we can, all of us together as a unit.
Right.
We'll do whatever we can. We'll open our homes. Like, I don't know, right now, there's a boy sleeping in my house. You know
Really?
how crazy that is? I'm here, and there's a boy sleeping in my house in Eretz Yisrael. But that's what we do, and we do it as a unit.
Wow. As we conclude, I do want to mention something as a little, I guess, meta for this podcast, I guess. Personally, I was in yeshiva for a long time, and I definitely feel I would not be where I am today. I'm not just saying a cliche. And personally, with this podcast, I can't imagine Yaakov Linger would have been a part of something like this if I'd gone back all those years. Definitely at certain points in my life, I was very angry, definitely confused as to where I wanted to go. And it definitely because of you and your yeshiva that this is possible and a lot of my life is possible. So I definitely want to publicly thank you and tell you I love you and thank you very much.
I love you too very much, and we're extremely proud of you. Of what you're doing, the two of you together.
Oh, thanks.
It's amazing.
I feel like we're like
I was on the pull out of
moment and like
violin.
Right.
I happen to be, I'm very comfortable with my emotions.
Right. No.
And to express them. Some people don't. Some people get awkward, but.
Like me.
I am so proud of all my talmidim, and I'm very honored to be here on the show. And I think that you're touching so many people in so many beautiful ways. So keep doing the great work. And thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on.
Hope you enjoyed that episode of the Meaningful People podcast. We sure did. It was amazing, for me at least, to sit down with Rabbi Senter for the first time and speak to him for that length of time. He's certainly a meaningful person. He's working on so many different things. So keep your eyes and ears open, and you never know what you're going to see him doing.
Yeah, and just to tailgate on that, Rabbi Senter is involved in very many innovative projects, and one of the projects that I know of that I love is his mashgiach in the yeshiva, Rabbi Stark, has a podcast as well. It's called Rabbi Stark Podcast, and it's definitely an awesome podcast. It's a schmooze weekly. Definitely you should check that out. But it's just one of the many things that Rabbi Senter is doing to change the world. So it's awesome.
So we hope you've been enjoying all these episodes, and we hope to be putting out one a week. So stay tuned to our page, whether you're watching now on YouTube or listening on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. We hope to be creating much more meaningful content.
And if you have someone in mind that you think would be great, you could definitely send us an email at meaningfulpeoplepodcast@gmail.com. Very professional. And we get a lot of great suggestions, and we try to get to everyone. And thanks so much for listening.